little bit of a fast fade out there, Charles.
There
but
you are.
had a new song for us. Whoops, I didn't want that image up there just yet, but we might as well discuss it. I'm back from Patreon, which is the annual confab for Patreon. And I have to say, Charles, I was very impressed with Jack Conte, the CEO of Patreon, and it's a real startup. I think a lot of people who are sponsors on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and feel like maybe it's not as robust a platform as YouTube and want us to go back to YouTube. I really want to help them understand that Patreon is not a giant, billion-dollar operation like Google or Apple.
You'd never know looking at that.
Well, I mean, it was a nice event. They really did a good job, and Jack gave a really inspiring speech about how he started the company, and it gave me a renewed enthusiasm for participating on Patreon, and it really is a great way for people to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth, keep us going, build up something like this, which is a great alternative to things like YouTube. A lot of people are really balking at the notion of paying like $2 a month to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. But the fact is, YouTube is not free. We have relinquished our freedom of choice by giving away all of this stuff to these companies that are giving us vast services. I mean, the video network that Google has created in YouTube is so expensive, it's virtually impossible for any competitors. So people can buy back their right to choose what they get to watch rather than allowing YouTube to ban Alex Jones, and how long is it before they ban Charles Ortel or Crowdsource the Truth. So by having an independent platform like that, or having sort of backup platforms that we can rely on, it's really worthwhile. So I hope that people will be patient as Patreon develops its platform. I got a really good opportunity to speak to some of their developers about the features that our viewers want to make their experience on portable devices better. They're working on that, and I think by the end of 2018, Patreon will be much more robust, and it'll be a great place for people to watch Sunday with Charles and all the other wonderful programs that we have on Crowdsource the Truth.
Well, great. Well, welcome back. I'm glad I didn't have to go to San Francisco, not one of my favorite places, wherever it was.
Los Angeles, yeah.
Los Angeles, the city of my birth. I like Los Angeles.
I do too, although this was in an incredibly bad neighborhood. I did actually want to document that as well. It's that really got me thinking, because there's so many people talking about the rights of immigrants and whatever. There are so many Americans living in just decrepit, horrible situations. And the fact is, Charles, it's a danger to each of us. Downtown Los Angeles, one of the largest major cities, it's scary. And I've grown up in New York. I'm talking about entire blocks lined with tents, people living in squalor, the disease. I mean, I was obviously walking in a very dangerous neighborhood that I shouldn't have been in. And I have no idea how we could resolve something like that. And we want to bring more economically depressed people into the country. We got to focus our attention on helping who we've got here.
Exactly. Well, why don't we jump in a little bit to the main presentation, if that's
Absolutely,
okay?
we can do that right away.
But let's start with the art department.
That's
while you were away, the art department was very busy.
Exactly.
And, another tour de force. This is a takeoff, for those of you who don't instantly recognize it. This is a takeoff on the movie The Big Short, which was all about a bunch of people who profited in the crash of 2008. And I think in that particular case, there was a lot of unethical, even illegal activity in the way that was done. And you might say, so why do we have these people's faces up here, and why would we be suggesting that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, with first Bob Mueller and then James Comey, would have been involved in highly illegal activities that they're trying to cover up?
Perish the thought.
Perish the thought. So that will be, we're going to break some rather big news. There's been some new evidence that's come out. But when you think about the headline to this presentation, Bob Mueller, who now is persecuting anybody he wants to persecute with no real oversight, no effective oversight.
Including our friend Jerry Corsi.
Including Jerry Corsi and who knows who else. Bob Mueller was head of the FBI from September 4th, 2001 to September 4th, 2013, which happens to be precisely when the Clinton Foundation, precisely in that period, metastasized, the cancer on the charity network spread around the world. All the while, Bob Mueller was on top of the FBI, and for the last 4+ years of his tenure, that is to say from January 20th, 2009, January 21st, 2009, till September 4th, 2013, Hillary Clinton was somehow given latitude to operate all of her government business, and I would argue illicit, personal and foundation business, on servers that were not secure, using devices that were not secure, creating records that were not in the custody and control of the United States government. All the while, Bob Mueller was head of the FBI, and he either knew about this and let it slide, which is ridiculous, or he didn't know about it, which is even more ridiculous. So it's
Ear goggling.
I mean, it's just, and then, so what does he do when all this is going on? They say, I got the perfect plan. I'll bring in dopey James Comey to replace me. And, you know, either Comey knew about this illicit arrangement with Hillary Clinton's emails and with the Clinton Foundation operations and public corruption, or he didn't. Again, same issue. So here's this tag team is, I think, wholly culpable of a raft of crimes, likely including obstruction of justice.
Little crime. Just a little one.
Just a little
When
one.
you're 6'8", all crimes seem smaller.
I guess that's true. So, you know, when we look at this, rather than flipping on, I like to flip off MSNBC, but
Especially Rachel Maddow.
all right, or CNN. You turn up to that station, and unfortunately, I'll be sitting there with a clicker and clicking, and I don't have an automatic skip CNN or skip MSNBC button yet. But so I'll land on it for a second, and it's the same crazy Russia, 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 you know. And when you compare the two things, here you have the Democratic Party, the Obama administration, senior cabinet level officials, I believe, conspiring to rig the 2015 Democratic primaries, both the Republican and the Democrat. I think they were very happy to have Trump, you know, winning these primaries, is my suspicion. And of course, it was a foregone conclusion that Hillary was going to win the primary. And then they tried to rig the actual general election and failed. And ever since then, they've been trying to cover all this up because they know once the American people see the full extent of this criminal behavior and how far back it goes, that heads literally are going to roll over this.
It's really absurd, Charles. I'm continuing to be amazed that people don't think it's a big deal that Hillary Clinton used her own servers. She's very effective in deception, in tricking people and selling these huge deceptions. I mean, here she is, she's emailing whoever.
Yeah, she's not so, isn't that one of those like vintage Blackberries that she
Well, right, that was the thing. And see,
she got it at the same place where she got that vintage brooch.
Joking aside, to buy the BlackBerry on eBay, in my mind, I mean, we're laughing, but what that indicates to me is that there was a version of the BlackBerry that was probably no longer available new, that maybe you were unable to load an older operating system or something like that. Very frequently with obscure tools, obscure software tools like hacking tools, they don't get updated as frequently as commercial software. And so if an operating system is updated, it's possible that a hacking tool or a certain rigged up system may no longer work. That's part of the reason why software companies are frequently updating their operating systems, is to plug holes. So that would be a very logical explanation as to why Hillary would need an older BlackBerry, because it would still have known exploits. So if she's able to, you know, there was a lot of reporting about Imran Awan hacking BlackBerries, and so why is she using this older unsecured BlackBerry?
So again, the art department has outdone itself, and if we could go to the first slide.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, I think we have now done, I think this is our 117th show. We're going to show the playlist in a bit, but I believe this is 117.
We're getting up there.
We're getting up there, yeah. My great-grandfather made it to 103. But,
wow.
But 117, you know.
Cue the Ortel animation.
Yeah, actually, he was actually my great-grandfather who made it to 103. His name was, of all things, William Julius Ortel.
My grandfather's name was Julius as well.
And he liked to be called Will, not William. And he was very good with his hands. He grew up in Chicago, and his father was an immigrant from Germany. He was one of a number of kids, and he was very good woodworking. So he nearly became, a carpenter or whatever. But instead, he decided he was interested in being an accountant.
Huh.
And so he actually went to it wasn't college and it wasn't high school, but it was a level above high school. We have the textbook. It's a very thin textbook with his signature on it, and he spilled ink on the cover. So we actually have that, and all of his records. I go on and on, but he then became quite a serious forensic accountant, and then in business, and then president of
Gave up carpentry.
But he always had a love of carpentry.
So he sort of said, "What would Jesus do?" And then he did the opposite.
Yeah. But that may be where I get the accounting interest from him, is why I bring it up. So the real story here, I think, as we resist the temptation to follow the CNN news van and the Scooby-Doo van and everything else around,
as it crashes,
is to go back in, and I hope the Trump team is already well down this path of looking at very closely communications among Team Obama, not simply Barack Obama and his top advisors, but the supporters and the people who would have done the dirty work, the Eric Holders, the Loretta Lynches, and Team Clinton, alongside Team Bush and other members of the that Ewan McMuffin or whatever that guy's name, what was it? The guy who ran in Utah for president.
I don't know about Ewan McMuffin.
I call him Ewan McMuffin, but it was some other name like that. He's hopeless NeverTrumper.
Oh, John...
no, it was Ewan.
Kasich?
No, that's another NeverTrumper. But anyway, these people really believed that they could conspire to manipulate who would be the nominees, the Democrat and Republican nominees, and then they thought they could rig the election. That's, in my view, why Hillary was so cocky and didn't campaign.
Right.
And incidentally, you probably missed it, but Trump was on fire yesterday
at
the rally. I watched a bit of the one in Montana, and he basically made light. He didn't make light. He raked Hillary over the coals for being a horrible candidate, and he was a good candidate, and that's why he won. And now you ask any of the fake news, what you should care about, and Trump actually said, Russia, 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 Russia. It's very funny. So we have to go through all this. Obviously, this election is extremely important.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about it in a second. But minute we get through the election, assuming it is decisive, one way or the other, attention is going to shift extremely rapidly to this November 15th, 2018 tax deadline that I keep talking about. I think before the election, the hope of Team Clinton and Team Obama is they're still clinging to the hope that Christmas is going to come early and they're going to take at least the House and maybe the Senate, and with that, they can stop any of this stuff from being all that lethal, because they'll have the threat of, we're going to impeach Trump, we're going to do this, we're going to do that.
Keep his hands full with all of that.
Right. Well, that's why the November 15th deadline is so important. You have to file your tax return by November. It's not like you could say, well, I'll file it on the 16th. You can't do that.
But they do every single thing they do is stuff that you say you can't do.
But on the tax return, you really can't do it. And there's just no way to go beyond that date. And so they have to file something. And then for it to be complete, it has to have an audit.
Sandwich.
Well, yeah.
What do you mean it's not a tax return?
That's right.
It's got cheese on it.
It's got Gouda. But I think what has happened, thanks to you and thanks to this program and thanks to the work that we've done in this channel and the many followers you now have and this program has, the word is out. I mean, to many tax authorities, to many investigators, many governments around this globe are looking at this, have their eyes on this November 15th tax deadline. In addition, the accounting firms are on notice, strict notice, that we're going to talk about the kind of targets that I like to go out after that are, engaged in fraud, because I don't mind going after some pretty big targets. In fact, the bigger the better. The bigger the target engaged in fraud, the more likelihood that once you actually are brought to account, that there's going to be money around to pay the penalties.
Right.
And there's going to be an abiding interest in making an example of, I don't know, General Electric, for example, just to pick a company out of the blue that I was thinking about the other day. So
it just happened to.
it just came to my front of mind. But if we could go into the...
We don't want to see this for fun?
Oh, yeah, sure. So actually, do this year to date, or 5 years was even better if you can do that.
Where do we have that?
Just click there, if you can.
Yeah.
So look at that.
Ooh. So this is when they met Charles, right here.
No, actually, when they met me was back in 2007. It doesn't. You could try Max. You can see upper right. Yeah. Okay. If you look at, they met me right about here. Yeah, actually, that's pretty close to when I started. August.
July 13th.
July 31st, if you can get
yeah.
that. Pretty much right there.
Yeah.
And so what happened is that GE went pretty far down pretty quick, and then at that point in time, in early 2009, the world was not ready to let, or prepared to let, a company as badly extended as General Electric go belly up, because it would have taken down many banks and many counterparties around the world. So I think decisions were made at the highest level to say we got to give Immelt and GE a chance to work their way out of this crisis.
Too big to fail.
Too big to fail.
Fits with our theme today perfectly.
Right, exactly. So if we could then just go back into the second slide after that. Yeah. This disclaimer, we are not going to dwell on it, but it's important, particularly for people who don't live inside the United States of America, to understand that thanks to our founders, we have in this country a right of free expression that's very important. And before we got on air, Jason and I were briefly talking about, reminding each other that Thomas Jefferson, who is the architect in this country of the Bill of Rights, and also the signer of the Declaration, the drafter of the Declaration of Independence and many other attributes, he believed passionately, as I think Jason and I do, that you have an absolute right to express yourself, but that means that if you say utter garbage, then I have an absolute right to counter your utter garbage. You don't want to keep people, muttering around the streets to themselves utter garbage. You want them to say it in the town square so that the town can correct the garbage and you move forward. So we try on this show to do a lot of work using primary sources. Jason and I have experiences that are, I think, complementary. We look at things and Jason can visualize things for you in ways that we hope are helpful to your analytical process. Wherever possible, with these backup slides, we try to give you links to the supporting information. And I get many emails, and I appreciate them, from people thanking us for doing it this way. They don't necessarily absorb what we're talking about as quickly as we may be talking about it. Many like to go off and study it for themselves or go back to previous presentations. Jason has put together this playlist, which is really, it's pretty impressive, frankly. Daunting, I would say.
Definitely filling up with a lot of content, Charles. So for people who want to go back and review this stuff, it's all conveniently curated in one place here on YouTube on the Jason Goodman channel, which is the home of Crowdsource the Truth. And we've got today is 117. We've got all the Sunday with Charles and all of the Charles Ortella's closing in videos in one convenient playlist. So if you find yourself with approximately 346 hours, if you're on a very long flight, you can watch all of this material.
If you're going to go up to Mars and colonize it. But actually, one of the things I would point out on that, if we just go back to it for a second,
sure.
It's interesting is that we get just this playlist, this index here, has 13,000 views just of the index. Mm-hmm. On top of which we probably have an average, well, I don't know how many views we have in total on this, but certainly 10,000 per episode, maybe more than that on average. is a lot of time has been spent watching this material. And why is that relevant? It's relevant because as these accounting firms, are you listening, BKD? As Pricewaterhouse, as Cohn-Resnick, as other people are trying to decide whether they want to go out of business by issuing an audit on the 15th of November 2018, accepting representation letters from people who are known and pathetic liars like Bruce Lindsay and this fellow Andrew Kessel, who have repeatedly affixed their signatures. Bruce used to be the CEO. Kessel is the CFO of the Clinton Foundation. They have repeatedly lied under oath, under penalties of perjury, submitting representation letters and filings across state lines using the mail, using electronic means, and sending them as well to international locations. If you're going to accept a representation from a congenital bunch of liars, how would you do that, without taking a gander at these 117 videos that we've done? Not all 117, but you might want to take a look at, say, 2 or 3 of them. Maybe go to the Zero Hedge article done September 6th, 7th, 2016, where there's a long memo categorizing problems with these Clinton Foundation filings. You can't, you're in a negotiation now as this accounting firm, whoever it is, with this Nimrod, Kessel, or his successor. And you gotta ask the questions that we've laid out for you. You've got to get written answers. You got to then confirm. You can't just take what this Nimrod has to say. He's a known liar. He's a pathetic liar. You've got to ask the tough questions, demand to see the evidence, cross-check it, and if you are prepared, if you're still prepared to issue an audit saying that it's done using generally accepted accounting principles on a consistent basis year to year for 2017 compared to 2016, if you are prepared to do that at BKD, at Pricewaterhouse, at Cohn-Resnick right now, then you really should just forget about being an accountant and
we've got an extra large tiger suit for you.
Exactly. You ought to just, take your stuff, go back home, tell your wife you're not going to be an accountant anymore, and just indulge your life's passions. If you want to be a bartender, do that. If you want to be a street performer, do that. If you want to, go back to theater school, do that. But anybody who would affix a firm's name to an audit that has to be issued by November 15th, 2018, is just has a death wish, is suicidal.
Something's just occurred to me, Charles. You should start a scholarship program, the Charles Ortel Clown College Scholarship, that you could send any of these clowns to college if they want to start a second career after the audit is issued.
Yeah, not a huge fan of clowns, but they used to scare me
now,
as a kid.
The other thing I want to remind people of, Charles, is that they can contact you on Twitter at Charles Ortel, and they can also get in touch with me through Twitter. There's been some shadow banning going on. I cannot get out of this 24.3K rut, but you seem to be steadily, now they've slowed you down as well. It's increasing, but not quite that much.
What is the number exactly?
32.6.
But the exact number? Yeah, so it's slowly but sure. It was at 32, stuck at 32.3 for a while. So it's up.
But still, you used to gain almost 1,000 a week, and now it's several hundred a week.
Yeah, 500 a week maybe for a while.
Right, and then now it's leveled off.
Definitely so. Well, as a guess, social media is doing their best to quiet the rising red tsunami. This one actually is funny. I don't have it linked in the slides. Before once I finished the slides and sent them over to Jason, I was just going through to see what's the recent news, and this is in the kick the dog when you're down, the Eric Holder, when we go low, we kick. Here, GE announces all these problems, so what does Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs Department decide? We're going to sue you for $1 billion going back to 2004. That's just one country, right? I think this GE, I can't confirm this, I just go by what's in the public domain, but I have gotten several emails from people on the subject, and one is up in Boston and mentioned to me that friends who are connected to GE are paralyzed with fear that there in fact is going to be a bankruptcy looming. And
Wow.
that's what they're working on.
Well, 700. So why'd they choose 770 million pounds? There's a certain bald Buddhist I used to know who would have something to say about that number. But
it could actually be $1 billion, converted to pounds to get to that number. I don't know, but.
Well, I would think the Queen would be suing in pounds sterling.
That's true. So let's just get into this a little bit. Here's this fellow, Bret Stephens, and I don't know if you can get through to a New York Times story. Oh, this is American Thinker, actually. Hit the first one. This is this fellow, don't hit the column if you don't mind, but Bret Stephens was a NeverTrumper, just a nonstop NeverTrumper. And here's this Thomas Lifson who's a great guy who runs, I don't think he might even own the American Thinker, but he runs it. And I always read what he does very carefully, but here he's talking about how this Bret Stephens, who disliked everything there was about Trump in the beginning, thought he was a disaster or didn't know what he was doing. Even Bret Stephens is now coming around to the view that maybe this Donald Trump is not quite as stupid as everybody thought he was. I mean, and I have to marvel at, the gall of a journalist, looking down his or her nose at a man like Donald Trump, who is, he was born rich, but he's scrappy as hell. I mean, here's a guy who for now 50 years as an adult has been a celebrity, center stage, taking on all these naysayers. When somebody tells Donald Trump, you'll never be able to do that, he just says, okay, I think I'm going to do that.
Right now.
I just did it.
Yeah.
I mean, and people like that fail, but people like most of the journalists, they fail and they don't learn. They're just many of them are just failures. Fake Yapper at CNN, he's a failure. He cannot see. He can't see truth when it's staring him right in the eye. I
just think they're not journalists. I think they're carrying out a role that's vastly different than what everyone thinks it is.
And then this thing is amazing. This Senator Grassley out there in Iowa is a fantastic dude. Really, he's a magnificent human being. So what happened in the whole Kavanaugh thing, this came out this morning.
Oh yeah, this is something else.
And look how many shares it has, 9.2 thousand shares already. And what happened was, through this genius, Kamala Harris, who was Attorney General in California before she became Senator, and she missed all the Clinton Foundation frauds that we're going to talk about in California, which we're going to be talking about in some depth. Nice work, Kamala. You really know what you're doing. So she gets this letter from some Jane Doe and immediately hypes the shit out of it, excuse my language, and then the folks at Grassley's office quickly figure out that this accuser, the second accuser, was a Jane Doe, made the whole thing up to get attention. And good for Grassley, what he did and his staff did, he said, you know what, I'm referring you, thanks for admitting that, I'm going to now refer you for prosecution to the Attorney General and to the head of the FBI. And I think, this is not this idea of everybody deserves to be believed.
The right to be believed.
There's no such right.
No. This is very important, I think, because we have a growing plague of people just spreading false accusations. Right. People need to have a strong and healthy fear of lying to implicate someone in any crime. I have been subjected to that online quite extensively, and we see in this matter that people are just doing it willy-nilly, thinking that there's no repercussions. So I hope that this false accuser is faced with suitable justice given the torment that the Kavanaugh family was put through over this.
Well, in general, I think it's a good idea. You don't want to be like those silly ads on TV where you're skeptical of everything, but you do want to have a certain degree of skepticism. When somebody makes a claim, you trust them, but you try to verify it, as Reagan said,
I'm
dealing with the Russians.
Quite skeptical of most everything.
Right, I know, but and one of the core tenets of the accounting profession, and certainly the banking profession, is that you should exercise, professional skepticism. In other words, you don't just tell your client, you're full of bullcrap. I mean, you listen to what they're saying, and you write down the questions that you might have about it. You think about how a fraudster might be trying to take advantage of you, if this person might be a fraudster, and you go down all those blind alleys to confirm what your client is telling you, which of course is not what BKD does. BKD is, I'm all in for fraud. This is a big fraud. I get to fly around on a, with a former president, to all these islands and all these places where there are hot and cold women running around. This is great. Where do I sign?
Box seats with Truman.
Exactly. This is awesome. So then we have this guy, and I don't like to dump on individuals, but this Jeff Flake, I'm sorry, you're not an effective virtue signaler, and he's trying to make the argument that Cruz and Trump are anti-Semitic because they're criticizing Soros.
So crazy.
And that's ridiculous. I mean, first of all, Soros, I wouldn't call him, a devout Jew. I mean, he's not that it's not up to me to decide whether somebody's devout or not devout. He's not somebody who, embraces Judaism and all this kind of stuff. But what he does embrace is criminal behavior around. He's been kicked out of country after country. He's persona non grata around the world. Some of the stuff that this man has done over the course of his life is far worse than the time I caught him foot faulting in an amateur tournament down in the Bahamas at a club. I mean, a guy who foot faults in a friendly tournament is scum. I mean, it's a game.
I mean, that's hardly the worst thing he's ever done.
I know.
Joe.
I know. I'm giving
Did you ever see this interview on 60 Minutes where he was talking about? I mean, he's not a Nazi, but he did work for them. So, in his own words, he describes how he went around with his, I guess it was his godfather. And he would shake down Jewish families in Hungary with Nazis, stealing their property. He describes in this interview how he can't approach business with morality in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I've met him a few times. A very unpleasant individual.
I'm sure.
But for Jeff Flake, I mean, it's a good thing. He's aptly named. No need to change his name. Senator Flake, ex-senator soon to be Flake. I mean, you are a condescending, as I say, you're all caps, you're a condescending and blithering idiot. I mean, here's somebody who is gamed, I don't know how many different governments around the world. He's operating supposed charities that are really partisan political activities in gross violation of the law. All of the charities that he operates in, any that he's a major donor of, deserve to be fully investigated. They're swamp central. And here's this Flake guy, calling out people criticizing Soros. Why do we think he might be doing that? Let's examine. Could it be that Jeff Flake is thinking about how he's going to get paid come January 1st, 2019, when he's going to be out of work? Do you think that enters into it at all? And maybe he'll be on the payroll after that of entities supported by Soros. You think there's a possibility?
Did Soros finance his campaign or anything like that?
I don't know.
I could probably check on Open Secrets.
Yeah, I don't know. But this is an interesting one. I'm not doing this out of vanity, but if you hit the whole link here, I just did a Google search on me with George Soros.
And it's got the foot fault story?
It doesn't have the foot fault story, but I do come on, pretty strong against him. And I certainly am not anti-Semitic.
Well, but there's nothing even Jewish related in the comment. It's just he's a guy, and Trump is calling him out. The thing that really adds insult to injury is that Jeff Flake is saying this in the same week that Hillary Clinton said that all black men look alike.
Yeah, I know.
To the laughter of an audience.
Right. Anyway,
hopefully they'll investigate. Why is Trump not investigating George Soros?
I don't know. It's not, the president doesn't decide who gets investigated.
We can't get the attorney general to investigate anything other than those fake pipe bombs.
Yeah, I mean, Forrest Gump's uncle's busy. I don't know what he's doing. He's probably at the big football game.
He did a press conference about the pipe bombs.
Oh, did he? Okay.
And then I was like, whoa, hey, he's alive. There he is. There he is.
Yeah. Yeah, I've given up on Mr. Sessions. I don't know if you saw this. This is an interesting thing that happened while you were in California. Somebody's filing a complaint, has filed a complaint against the tech titans for exercising, with the Federal Election Commission, for exercising too much influence in the forthcoming election.
Absolutely.
And I think that the more I think about this, I mean, I don't I've stopped using Facebook. I tweet, and my tweets automatically go to Facebook, but I don't look at Facebook anymore because I think this guy Zuckerberg is a disgrace, and I don't want to make him any richer than he already is. But when you think about those of us who are not that tech savvy, Jason is tech savvy, I'm not. When you think about the power that these tech companies have to filter what you see on your primary interface for news, which today is your cell phone, typically your smartphone, they have an amazing ability to bury stories that are important or to promote stories that are, they feel are important. What is that saying, Jason? You have it better than I do, that a lie travels.
A lie can go around the world before the truth even gets its pants on.
Right, that should be maybe the motto for Crowdsource the Truth.
But the election influence angle is really important because I know, Charles, that you're aware Laura Loomer has been banned from Twitter and really no reason has even been given to her. I've had Laura on a couple times in the past few weeks and she's been talking about this, but Laura is there calling out candidates that are straight breaking the law, and the mainstream media is not covering it. She's been confronting Keith Ellison, she's been confronting Michael Avenatti, David Hogg, obviously not a candidate, but Laura went and he was campaigning and he denied it, and there was some handler with him who she's spotted with him before. So Laura is really doing an on-the-ground investigation that, love her or hate her, she's bringing forward information that the mainstream media is not, and she is like a force of nature. She's just out there.
Well, back in the day, when you think about, I think the name is Ida Tarbell is one of the original muckrakers. I think that was her name. She wrote a book from memory exposing I think she was the one who exposed the Chicago meatpacking industry and then Standard Oil. I may have that wrong. But, people in journalism used to revere people like Laura Loomer, who is really wise. She's quite a young person, and she's super wise I don't want to give away her age, but super wise for her years, and indefatigable. And she's somebody that I would have thought would be revered by the supposedly intrepid mainstream journalists, but no.
Well, they're jealous.
Yeah.
And they're fearful that she's making them obsolete.
Well, now this is a story, I don't know if you saw it, John Solomon, I think had it out. I think this is the one. Yeah, John Solomon. So it turns out, here's another thing from Grassley. It turns out that the CIA may have been spying on whistleblowers.
No.
That's outrageous.
No, well,
and Clapper lied about it. Of course, Clapper is the world's worst liar. I mean, John Brennan is pretty bad, but Clapper is just, that he's got these face gestures, and he tugs on his left ear right before he's going to lie, and it's like,
It's like he's signaling the pitcher or something.
Exactly. I mean, it's a good thing that he didn't run America's top security agency. Oh, but he did under Obama.
The thing is, Charles, that very matter, the whole fact of the whistleblower, they created this tip line, and everybody who called into the tip line basically got spied on. In Michael Moore's new book, Pain, How We Dismantled the FBI in Our Pajamas, Michael talks about this. The book's just out this week. So he's brought that up, and I find it really interesting how many people have come out of the woodwork to say, oh, True Pundit is fake news. But I think they're doing that because they're fearful that Michael's getting the real word out. Just like with Laura, these are people who are really breaking down walls, and the people who are there as the sentries at those walls don't want that happening.
Right, and I think this is the danger. When we go back, we think it's not simply an Obama issue, it's also, I think, a Bush-era issue, and it probably predates that under Clinton and elsewhere. When you start having these agencies that don't really report to anybody and are working on a need-to-know basis on missions that are so super sensitive they'd have to shoot you if they told you what. When you start going down in that direction, you end up with rogue criminals, frankly.
Yes.
And we can't. There are people in the mainstream academia, university campuses who do sadly believe the ends justify the means. I do not believe that.
Someone said that to me the other day, that the ends justify. It's like, you're mad.
Yeah,
That-
exactly.
there's no
Right.
cap on that.
And you know, we have, remember, Obama's on the campaign trail now. And I have to say, in 2008, he really was a very effective campaigner, Barack Obama, I thought. And John McCain was, if you can imagine this, worse than Hillary Clinton as a campaigner, but which is saying something. Maybe Hillary took her tips from John McCain. Maybe that's how she figured out, you know, be really abrasive, condescending, nasty, and then people won't vote for you, and you'll lose.
It's a winning formula. It's a surefire tactic.
But then this is another thing that came out just recently in Yahoo, which Yahoo, I used to enjoy the site and use the email, but not anymore.
Oops, sorry.
It's the mouse.
Is this it?
Yeah.
Okay. No, you know what? There was an update to the operating system, and now the mouse doesn't show up on this monitor, so I've got to. So
but this is really interesting. From around 2009. Now, what happened in 2009?
Obama became the president.
And who was his top advisor? Valerie Jarrett.
Oh, yeah.
And where was she born?
Iran.
And does her family have connections in Iran? Probably. So from around 2009 to 2003, for some strange reason, you know, our ability to figure out what was going on and to use the secret internet-based communication system was compromised, and the compromising started in Iran. So is that at all suspicious? That, you know, here we have an incoming president with this top advisor who was probably, you know, doing a lot of the real work. Some argued that she, Valerie Jarrett, was really the president. Obama was just there for show. On her Twitter handle, it used to be, I forget if her middle initial is there or not, but I think it's VJ44 is her Twitter handle.
What?
Her real Twitter handle, seriously.
Because she thinks she's the.
Well, I don't know. I mean, she may just be trolling people, but that you can see it on Twitter. But so again, exercising professional skepticism. Here you have a change in policy under Obama to, you know, back away from the Saudi Arabian and other monarchies, the Sunni kingdoms, to move and embrace Iran. You're pummeled between 2009 and 2013, it turns out, by Iran. You do a really bad deal with Iran.
Yeah.
A lot of money goes to Iran. And, you know, it's like, is nobody asking the question, like, could it be that Valerie Jarrett and other people around Obama are in thrall to Iran? Instead of going, Russia, 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 we should be going, Iran, 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 Iran. What the hell's going on? Who are all these people who are advocating for Iran, who are saying that, you know, the Iran deal was a good deal? Let's investigate that to see how many of those people registered as foreign agents under FARA, and see how many of those people have disclosed compensation that may have gone either to them personally or to members of their family. How come there isn't an equivalent balancing here? And I would argue, and I've argued from the very beginning on this with the Trump administration, the issue that should be investigated here is not a specific country's interfering in one election. The issue should be the degree to which foreign interests pay off law firms, pay off investment firms, pay off people who are close to politicians to increase their influence in an incoming administration. That's something that should be studied, and we should go right the way back, you know, a decent, through two administrations. Certainly we should go all the way through the Obama administration and all the way through the Bush administration.
Oh, absolutely.
For starters. For fun, we might go further back into Clinton and then H.W. Bush to really make it interesting. But
well, H.W. Bush, of course, Iran-Contra, that was a whole thing. And, you know, I mean, again, I come back to Michael Moore's book. One of the core accusations of the book is that the George W. Bush administration and the Barack Obama administration both knew that Osama bin Laden was being hidden and sheltered in Iran, and this whistleblower tip line, anybody who called with any information about that was immediately spied on, terrorized, you know, had their family threatened and whatever.
That's bullcrap.
I mean,
you can't do that.
Well, it happened.
And it's got to be fully exposed. So if we go back into the slides, I just wanted to put this one up here. I had a chance to go on RT America. I generally go on RT International, but this journalist who got into some trouble and had to leave CNN for a while is now on with RT on a weekday show. And so I got to interact with him about sanctions. And I put this up just to show this only has 17,000 views.
When
And
did
it's
that
short,
go
it's
out?
9 minutes.
When did that go out?
On November 2nd. So we don't need
And
to watch
also,
it.
do you notice that it says RT is funded in whole or in part by the Russian government? Why doesn't it tell us who's funding CNN in whole or
Right.
in part?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting little new feature of YouTube. I mean, again, they've got such influence, subtle, subliminal.
So then this, if we hit this one, this is, this, let's see, is it, who's the author? Is this Rosalind Helderman? Yeah, Rosalind Helderman has been in touch with me, and they're asking, I'm now in touch with more of the mainstream people, with Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, again with a new guy, the Daily Caller, which is not quite in the mainstream, but they are trying to focus on this period in June, July, May, June, July, August 2016, as Roger Stone was mouthing off about what he thought was coming, and they're trying, it seems as if Mueller is trying to suggest that Roger Stone and somehow was in direct contact with Julian Assange. And when I go back, the questions these people have asked me forced me to go back through my emails and notes, and you just Google Julian Assange in this time frame, and you will get to many, many public stories about Julian Assange and what he was saying, and what he was intimating. In May, I believe, he was intimating, I think I have this right, that around May, it might have been a little later than that, that he had information on Hillary Clinton that would send her to prison.
Right.
And so when I saw that, and I said to myself, well, okay, you know, you guys are the mainstream journalists. If I sent an email to the people at Fox, get your ass over, get on a plane and go to London. You know, same thing I think to the Sunday. Well, you guys, what is he talking about here? I mean, he's saying, hello, I got information that could put Hillary Clinton in prison. And we're going to say, oh, let's sit on that. Let's not look at that.
No, can't we drone them?
Exactly.
They're trying to do away with it. But, I mean, isn't it quite clear that Roger Stone was just listening to what Julian Assange was saying and making his own opinion?
I think that's probably true. Much as all the other people in the mainstream press and the Democrat side, and you know, and at least Roger Stone wasn't using the CIA to spy on the Trump campaign, the way it seems that maybe, you know, the Obama administration might have been doing that, or using MI6 to spy.
GCHQ.
Or GC. I mean, you know, it's ridiculous. So this is a bit of shameless self-promotion, but GE is back, as I promised in the last broadcast it was going to be back, and this story came out yesterday. Look at this. When will GE file for bankruptcy? Wow. I mean, when you see stories like that, and Zero Hedge is actually, I'm a big fan of Zero Hedge. As people know, I read Obama, I'm sort of making fun of Obama by saying that it's the first thing I read in the morning when I wake up and the last thing I read before I go to sleep, because I have such a sad life. But you know, when you see this kind of a story in Zero Hedge, I mean, this is read by the people who care about money and know how to invest. You see this and you think through what we're about to take you through on GE, you know, around the world, in boardrooms, in meeting rooms, in conference rooms, people are looking and saying, they're just saying, what is my GE exposure? Okay, that question went out.
What do you mean by that?
So if you're a big company and let's say you're extending credit one way or another, you're letting GE.
Because they have a lot of lending. They're like a bank.
Well, no. If you're let's say in a deal with GE and you say, okay, yeah, you can pay me $1 million a month, but you can pay me after 90 days. You are basically lending money to GE when you do that. And people are around the world. The smart people are saying, tell me what my exposure is to General Electric.
How much money we've lent them, because when they go bankrupt, we're not going to get it back.
Get it back. Yeah, let's get it back. You know and the other thing that's happening now is competitors. And I wrote about this in the pieces that we've linked before. When there's blood in the water on a company like this, competitors don't say, well, Siemens, you know, we're trying to get every contract we can from the power business of GE, but because they're having financial difficulties, you know what we'll do? Why don't we raise our prices so that we can give GE a chance to make money? No, you go in and you cut the shit out of your prices.
Just to knock them out.
Yeah, to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And so this is a very, very dangerous week ahead for General Electric. And the fact that the stock price has moved so rapidly down so quickly, without somebody from one or more of the investment firms around, saying, well, I don't have, the big one has, I think, 1 or 2 directors on the board of GE, and you can't, when you have inside information, you can't then turn around and readily do things like buy more stock, but in a big way. But somebody, if there is a story here at GE that's positive, and perhaps there is one, but if there is a story about GE that's positive, you would have thought that GE would be working overtime, to find some credible investor, some lionized person who has made money before, going into a company in adversity, and find that person and give them a deal and say to them, hey, you need to buy $3 billion, $5 billion worth of some kind of security, whether it's convertible preferred stock or common stock or something. You need to send the market a message that you've been over this thing, that you see that, that the downside has been reached, that you believe in the near and medium and long-term future of this company. As yet, that hasn't happened. And the longer that doesn't happen, the more this stock will be in the crosshairs. So, and this is something we have been pointing out. I started on this project back in really, I started looking at it at first in February of 2007, and then reaching the firm conclusion that it was a disaster in about May of 2007, and then pushing hard on it, starting in writing by around August of 2007 rather. So I've been on this for 11 years.
Wow.
And it is. We're going to talk about why it's taken so long for it to reach the final place that it's in. But
you're a patient man, Charles.
I am indeed. But there is something that connects. Why am I talking about the Clinton-Obama charities, and why am I talking about GE? The connection here is, great-grandfather Will Ortel's interest in accounting and accounting fraud. I mean, we're talking in both cases, in my view, about accounting fraud. And GE, they announced last week that I think it's the SEC and the Department of Justice are both looking, I believe it's Department of Justice, are both looking into the accounting at GE, and not just the recent quarter. They're looking at history, and to get it right, they're going to have to look at the long history, and they're going to want to read my work, which is in the public domain, and I'm happy to give it to them if they can't find it. So it's accounting fraud, and in this program, we are against accounting fraud. I mean, very few people, the people who are in favor of accounting fraud include people like Bernie Madoff, jail. Raj Ratnam, jail. There's a company, when you become interested and promote accounting fraud, you end up going to jail. So, forgive me for this. I know the people who don't like numbers. You have an interesting audience, Jason. You have some people who loathe numbers, and other people who will send emails saying, you're not giving us enough numbers.
It's a diverse crowd.
So we're trying to please everybody here. This is interesting. These numbers are in, this number here, for example, the revenues in 2007 of wider GE, and the term of art is called consolidated. That means their worldwide revenues, everything, $172.7 billion in 2007. Okay?
Whoa.
Now, when you go back and you say, all right, 10 years have passed. These are full year numbers for, in both cases. You can look at quarterly numbers. Quarterly numbers are not audited as closely. They're unaudited, actually. These are supposedly audited, and the annual cost of an audit for GE is on the order of $100 million. And so it's a real exercise where people going around to all their principal divisions, checking everything, checking the headquarters, a lot of work goes into an audit for GE.
But it's also, that's such a huge sum, it starts to give you some insight into who and how might be incentivized to participate in this type of fraud. $100 million.
Right, $100 million.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
but then you look and you say, all right, I'm not giving a course here on management, but for the wider audience, you're sitting there and 10 years ago, your business did $172.7 million. Now, most companies and most highly paid executives get the idea that if you want to deliver more profit to the bottom line and more cash to the bottom line, you'd like to grow your revenues. And remember, these numbers are not adjusted for inflation. So $172.7 billion in 2007 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
in 2017. Just to get that same number, you'd probably have to be up to 200 to have the same result. Now, how much did they get in 2017, Jason? You see that number just move to the right.
It's going down to 122.
So they go down 50 billion. In 10 years, they managed to decrease their revenues 50 billion.
Why is that?
Well, they had divestitures, and they have, I mean, the number of excuses at these analyst meetings that they would have under Jeff Immelt, you know, well, we're right-sizing, and we're taking costs out, and we're divesting, and we're repositioning, and we're doing this. I mean, and they're paying each other. They're paying Immelt like $20 million a year, and all these other people
Maybe that's
a ton
the
of
problem.
money. And the sales, you got to start here and say, you're General Electric. Maybe you should change your name and be Specific Electric instead of General. Just do something to focus on what the hell it is you're supposed to do to increase your revenues. So your revenues fall just at a time when, you know, what happened in China? China did this. What happened in India? India did that. You know, even in America, you know, our prosperity is higher in 2017 than it was in 2007. So a starting place for this F- report card of GE is that simple number. We're going to get a little bit more complicated on you, but now we're going to go and just focus on 2007 as an exercise. The problem with GE is that this consolidated thing consists of a really bad banking operation or finance operation mixed into a slew of different businesses scattered all over the world in all types of different industries.
Medical stuff.
Medical, energy, light
Defense.
bulbs, some defense.
Yeah, avionics. Jan Weinberg did a whole thing about that.
So, you know, GE used to brag that it had 700 people, controllers in its accounting department, and that its tax return was the longest tax return of anything submitted, and millions of pages, and they had the ability to do things ordinary mortals couldn't do. Well, the one thing they should have thought about doing is saying, we're going to show you, here's our finance operation, and here's everything else. So you can say, the finance operation ought to get 1 multiple because banks trade, you know, typically trade at lower multiples than a growing, you know, forward-looking business with global potential is going to have a much higher multiple than a stodgy old bank. You think about banking, you know, what can banks do? Make a checking account, loan. Yeah. It's not like when they start doing sexy stuff, you sell out of the bank. Because it's as it is.
Something's up.
Yeah, something's up. It's like, yeah, I don't think so. So what we've done here is, in a consolidated return, my position, and I'm not an accountant, is that you should be subtracting the finance portion of the business interest from the revenues, and you should have something called pro forma net revenues. To make it simple, in 2007, 150 was non-finance. Have we got that right? 150. Yeah, 150 was total, and 50 was finance, and 100 was industrial.
Wow.
Okay? When you take off this should be netted. The pre-tax income, now GE is a funny thing because it's all over the world and they have tax magicians, as you know, they're learning the hard way that they've been using black magic, and that
Somebody saw behind the curtain.
Yeah, in England it's like, yeah, I'll take the
Had
billion.
a string on his hand.
In France, I'll take 800 million. Germany, yeah, Japan. Anyway, the simple way to look at a business like this is for every dollar of net revenue, how much falls to pre-tax income, the so-called pre-tax margin. You see, for the whole company, it's 18%. Then for the finance business, it's 28%. If you take out finance, you're left with 13% margin, 12.76% margin, right? Then you do a similar exercise with cash flow. This is operating cash flow. What did there? Less capital expenditures. I couldn't fit the whole two words in there, so I just made it CapEx. You then end up with free cash flow. Free cash flow is what I care about. It's what I was at a Harvard Business School event on Friday, and they were reminding me exactly, you know, it's accepted wisdom. You really
Cash was flowing freely.
Cash definitely was one. But it was a very nice event. But the free cash flow margin is actually a better thing to look at than the pre-tax margin. So the free cash flow, this is after you pay taxes. There's a whole bunch of different things in there. Back in 2007, when I wrote extensively and knew that this thing was in deep trouble because it had way too much debt, we haven't gotten into that yet, the free cash flow margin was 13.8%, whereas the pre-tax margin was 12.8%. Basically the same, okay? Then you look at, when people look at investing in a business, typically you'll get, Jeff Immelt with his pie charts or videos and beanies and swag bags and dinner and whatever, talking about, here's my dream of the future of GE. It's a paperless society where, your refrigerator orders they go on and on with some story about why GE is going to be in the center of the universe and why it's going to be really valuable. The smart people say, okay, Immelt, yeah, that's great. Fine, love it, great. Show me your balance sheet. Show me what happens if none of this crap works. And so the way you do that is, on the balance sheet, you start with equity. Now this is I'm actually giving GE the benefit of the doubt here. There's slices in the equity. There's a common equity, preferred equity, and there's equity or interests in GE that are not owned by the GE shareholders. I'm including all of that as a cushion. We can do a more aggressive analysis that says, how exposed is just the GE shareholder? This is the entire pile of equity supporting GE was $115.6 billion in 2007. In finance, it was $58 billion, and industrial was about the same. But the problem was that back by 2007, Immelt had been on a acquisition spree around the world, overpaying for many businesses that were, I like to call them story acquisitions. What's a story acquisition? You can't make sense of the numbers, so you get some story about how in the future we're all going to be a lot better off because I overpaid for this pig. And then you give yourself a big bonus for having overpaid for a pig.
Wow.
And then you have parties and analyst stuff and,
Cash flows freely.
It does, but when you cut through all this garbage, if you subtract out the goodwill that's created when you overpay for something and intangibles that can be worth not much, you find out that GE back in the day, at year-end 2007, had only 18 billion of tangible net worth. They had about then 10 billion shares, which means that they had the protection, the hard protection that might be available in a liquidation, assuming all of GE's numbers were right, was $1.80 a share. Stock was trading at 40.
Holy cow.
Right? So you look at this, you're saying, okay, wait a minute. You're asking me to pay 20 times liquidation value for a story that hasn't been a good story. It's been a nightmare since, really 2001. That's pretty highly valued for the whole thing. But then you say, well, wait, let's go take it a step further. The finance piece doesn't have much goodwill. Its liquidation value is $29.7 billion. And so when you take finance out of it, there's actually no cushion in the industrial. It's negative.
Oy.
You have negative $1.14 a share as your protection.
Wow.
And this industrial thing is supposed to be the strong arm that, should finance get into trouble, will dip into the pockets of an industrial to bail us out. And that was, in essence, what I wrote about in many hundreds of pages, with considering all.
But that's a good summary of why you determined it was such a dangerous financial situation.
But wait, it gets worse. That's in 2007. Now the picture for 2017, you'll notice there are a lot of red numbers on 2017. The total consolidated picture has a pre-tax margin of 7.35% as compared to 17.73%. So it's down 10 full percentage points. After 10 years, each year we whack off 1 percentage point of profit. I mean, that's a disaster. Revenues are down, our pre-tax margins are down, but we're now going to make you sit through a 2-hour presentation where we're going to talk segment by segment and joint venture about all the great things we're going to do in the future. And let's not forget that at the end of 2017, when they finally got rid of Immelt, because he was flying around the world with 2 corporate jets, one that he was in, and another one just in case the other one broke.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal about that. This guy, in 10 years, with all the consultants in the world and all the bankers in the world and all the smart executives who overpaid themselves and all the time with the trustees, they'd managed to have their revenues drop and their pre-tax margins go down 10 points. Their free cash flow margin, the consolidated level, go down from 16.7 to 3.3 thing. Their tangible equity for the whole firm to go negative, right? And then finance, look at finance. Finance revenues, net of interest, are $5.9 billion in 2017, down from 50 49.5. And how much, Jason, did they make in pre-tax income in 2017?
Well, pre-tax income. Where do we see that, Charles?
Right above the red in the middle. They lost 12. They managed to have revenues of 5.9 billion.
Negative 12,633.
They managed to lose at the pre-tax line on revenues 5.9. They somehow managed to lose 12.6 billion. This is why I say the finance business is not a business. You know, you don't go into finance, into mainstream finance, thinking that you're going to create Google. You know, you're not. It's a nuts and bolts business, and the finance business around the world, there's always some nutcase who is willing to take risks that you should not take, and overpay or encourage finance the overpaying of stupid acquisitions or stupid deals. And when the music stops playing and animating, you know, this reckless behavior, that's when asset values come crashing down. And that's what happened to GE in 2008 and 9. But Obama and his cabinet members and others decided to prop this mess up from 2009 forward. We're going to show that in a second. But you look at this, the finance business is a pig, and the industrial business is horrible. Look at this, its revenues went up some, from 100.6 to 113.7 billion, but its profit margins went from 12.8% to 3.4%. I mean, that's abysmal performance. Why would you do that? You know, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And you give somebody a report, somebody brought an interim report card like this to me and said, you know, we got our annual meeting coming up and we need to do a dry run of what we're going to tell the shareholders. And I'd say, no, we don't. And the guy would say, why don't we? Because you're not going to be at the annual meeting. You're out of here. This is ridiculous, right? It's a ridiculous performance. You can't justify this. And this, by the way, this is the performance that preceded the recent announcement of another unexpected loss that just happened. And the thing that triggered the recent debacle is not this report card, it's an even worse subsequent report card.
Wow.
So when you see this, and now let's go to the next slide. I tried to make this simple, and again, you know, I apologize for all the numbers. When you think about, you know, if you're going to buy a house or a condo or whatever, an interest rate that really matters to you is what's the mortgage interest rate. And the higher the interest rate, you know, the less
you like it.
The less, it's that simple, right? So in this period, 1998 to 2007, when, you know, GE had its first stumbling really in 2008, but in this period before the stumbling, mortgage interest rates were 6.62% on average, right? And the government borrowed only $400 billion a year on average. Now that's thinking about a period. If you look at a small compliment I can give to to Bill Clinton in this time frame is that on the tail end, as it were, of Bill Clinton's presidency, he really did get the propensity of governments to borrow way down. And indeed, in his final year, there was actually a surplus. Total governments actually took in more revenue than they spent, which has never happened since.
Wow.
But in this long period, the government wasn't really flexing its muscles, and people who were playing in the private sector, putting up homes, flipping properties or whatever, and the ancillary activity around that, construction activity real estate activity tends to create a lot of multiplier effect locally inside the country. It wasn't terrible at 6.62%, but look at what the average interest rates were, and they're propped up a little bit by the 2008 year when Obama was not president, 4.35%. So if you took that 6% out, it would probably be more like 4.1%. Is the average interest rate to buy a home compared to 6.62%. So you would think in this low interest rate environment, you know, there'd be a lot more activity than there actually has been. And then look at the amount of borrowing. Barack Obama, with a straight face, has been going around the country trying to out-Trump Trump and failing miserably in his speeches, you know, saying that we should thank him. This present recovery is because of Obama. He actually refers to himself in the third person. And I mean, I look at this and I think when you're borrowing $1.9 trillion in 2009, his first year, then 1.9 again, then 1.7, 1. That is a scandal.
Well, who's lending you 1.7 after they lent you 1.9 and you didn't pay it back?
That's right. Well,
GE?
It could be. We'll have to get to the bottom of that one.
So Charles, I come back to my usual question. I mean, how could they do this? It seems far too stupid for anyone in business. Is there something going on here that we haven't seen yet?
Yeah, I think that GE was so big relative. I mean, for much of this period, it owned, for example, NBC Universal, so it was very big in media. It was a gigantic advertiser.
The Pan Am building was the GE. Oh no, that was
no, the Pan Am was MetLife.
MetLife, right?
But the point here is GE was so big. They distribute. I was trying to tell this story to, I won't say who it was, but quite a friend of mine who's very famous in the movie business. I went to him about this. I said, this could be a book and a movie. And he said, well, what's it about? And I told him, gee, they distribute all my films. Can't do that.
Oh.
So they had a lot of power via NBC, via the film business, by advertising, they were a bank. They were lending, financing, all sorts of stuff. So they had outsized ability to shut analysts like me and others up. So if you're working for a mainstream firm, you can't so as easily go from J.P. Morgan back in 2006 and say, GE's a short, because GE would you'd like to get a gigantic piece of business out of GE, and you will ensure that you will not get that piece of business at that time, way back when. So the point here is that the environment in which GE started out and got into trouble, they've had 10 years of grace here to try to get their act together, and there better not be an argument, a successful argument, inside the Trump administration and inside the Fed to support this mess. I think GE has to go. It's on a trajectory to go into bankruptcy, and if it goes into bankruptcy, that may be a way to clean up what remains of it. But in such a process, there needs to be a tough look at the executive pay, the director oversight, the role of advisors. How come the regulators missed all this? Were the regulators bought off? And the picture for GE, I've had some experience trying to do and doing leverage buyouts. So when you buy a company using debt and equity in multiple countries at once. And when you do that, you learn that bad as the numbers that I was showing you before about GE, they're even worse when you start thinking about international, because
their performance overseas.
Well, no, when you're moving money from, let's say, out of France into Japan, France says, well, we don't like that. We don't like you to take money out of France. We're only going to let you take some of your cash out of France. You need to keep this in as a reserve for your workers, should you fire them. And so the true picture of your cash flow is often going to be a lot worse than the accounting numbers let you know when you start thinking about borrowing against your assets. So the other thing I would just point out here, I did a story in 2014 in the Washington Times when I was still doing a radio and this one here, a weekly radio program and also a series of columns. But this was when I started to make the arguments, and I know that they make you here. There you go. When you take this is, I guess, December 14th, 2014. When you take a harder look at the true economic performance under Barack Obama, the numbers that matter, which in my mind are private sector wages and what is called non-farm proprietor income. That would be, you'd be in non-farm proprietor income, an entrepreneur, Crowdsource the Truth, or whatever. That small businesses would fall in that, small business owners. And obviously private sector wages are the wages and salaries paid to people in the private sector. You want to see growth in those numbers, and you want to see debt come down, because debt is very, very high in this country. It's way off the charts high. So this was an article where I began to tease into those issues.
And didn't B-Rock increase the debt tremendously?
Yeah, and it's not just the government debt that matters. You've got to look at the debt on corporations, the debt on financial institutions, the debt on households. Under Barack Obama, debt went like this.
Right.
I guess I shouldn't use that. So
now you're going to be
I'm in trouble.
Called out
I'm in
by,
trouble.
whoever does the calling out.
Right. So, yeah, I argue that there's that story of the Potemkin village, in I think it was an empress in Russia was going around, and
Baby carriage goes down the stairs?
no, that's a different thing. It's that I think they were readying for war, and they basically, you create a false impression. What Obama did is create a false impression, in my view, that we had true economic recovery when we did not, in my view.
They seem to love false impressions of almost everything.
All right. So
enough of that.
So this is a very interesting thing that I just thought we should go back and talk about. In the past, we've had a presentation, more than one presentations about how in January 2016, and remember January 2016 is when a senior State Department employee came in and said, hey, wait, I could tell you a chapter and verse about corruption, maybe
Hard
treason,
drives, thumb drives, CD-ROM.
Send it all direct to Dopey James Comey. I said this stuff. I didn't even get a thank you note, no acknowledgement. So I'm coming in unannounced, and I want to basically let you know what I have. Well, we've covered this before. This is this article. Please don't hit the link, but this article takes you through some of that background. But there's a search warrant that was sworn out, and there's a link to it there. Again, you don't need to cover it. This is dated October 30th, 2016, 30 October 2016. And look what it says here. In February 2016, the State Department completed its review and found that 2,115 of the 30,490 emails contain information that is presently classified, i.e. as of October 30th, 2016, before the election. So this tells us a number of very important things. In February of 2016, before the primaries, really, there were some primaries in January, but before,
really heated up.
And there was a chance for Bernie at this point. The State Department had determined that of the 30,490 that Hillary belatedly turned over, we don't know about the bleach bit ones, we don't know about the ones on the Aberdeen computer, we're going to get to that.
Smashed.
But 7% of the emails that were turned over had information that was presently classified. And they knew this in February 2016, before the charade of the whole primaries. And I would say from a finance standpoint, that is a material fact, right? In every time that, Fake Yapper and others interacted, Maggie Haberman, with the Clinton campaign, they should have been asking, how many emails did you turn over and how many of them had classified information on them? Here we find out 7%, some 2,000 emails, had classified information. And they knew this in February 2016, and they certainly knew it before the actual election. And they sat on that. That, to me, we should be investigating how come this information was not made available to the voter, the Democratic primary voter and the general election voter. Because I would argue this is, interference in the primaries, interference in the general election.
Fraud.
It's election fraud, exactly. And who knew about this? And as a bet, Valerie Jarrett knew about it. As a bet, Obama knew about it. This is juicy information. And more to the point, how many other people were sending classified information on unsecure? Was Comey doing that? Was Mueller doing that?
John Kerry, apparently AOL email.
Did he really?
Well, we just had a whistleblowers roundtable with Kevin Shipp, and we had John Kiriakou and Bill Benny, and John said that while he was working for the Senate Intelligence Committee, John Kerry would ask him questions over email, and Kiriakou told him, I can't send a response to that to AOL. I'll go to jail for responding to that. So my question then becomes, are they using that to entrap people strategically?
Right.
Like, you slip and don't see where because sometimes, when you get an email from someone, it just says John Kerry. You might have to click on the thing to see, was this coming from his Ketchup King address or his AOL address or state.gov?
What is it, lurch at AOL? So
no, Mueller's got that.
But then we go on here in the search warrant, paragraph 21. It breaks down that 2,008 of the emails contain information classified confidential level, and what that means is that unauthorized disclosure of these emails could result in damage to national security. So,
Wow.
if I'm
It was convenient.
if I'm somebody who's a low information Democratic voter, and I'm trying to think about, Hillary Clinton was sold in 2016, in quotes, sold to the American population as highly experienced. No one is more qualified than Hillary Clinton.
To send emails.
And you can't even maintain control over information that could cause damage to national security. Then we have 65 could result in serious damage to national security, and 22 could result in exceptionally grave damage to national security. And those are only of the ones here, the 30,490 that she reluctantly turned over. So here's somebody, dumb enough to employ this system for 4 years, walk off the property, hold on to this stuff for another almost 2 years, and then, bleach bit stuff that was under subpoena, and still managed to turn in 7% of the emails have classified. You're that dumb.
Grave damage. So would something like an attack on a CIA installation in Benghazi and the murder of a U.S. ambassador count as severe damage, grave damage to national security?
Could well, and again, we don't yet know how many emails were actually sent. I think the real number is going to be at least 10 times this 30,490. And it would not surprise me that in the stuff that's missing, the 300,000 missing, some say 600,000 missing, that in those emails it's like 50% are either classified or corrupt or foundation fraud related emails.
And also, we've heard so many times this number 33,000 emails, which, always seemed to me like a made up number. Because if the real number is 650, and you say, well, it's 33,000. Yeah. 650,000, 33 sounds less bad.
Right. So then Bill Sapphire was somebody who wrote for the Times, an opinion writer for the Times, and he got in some trouble for calling, I think it was just Hillary a congenital liar. I may have that wrong. But if we hit this PolitiFact link, this is, PolitiFraud is what I call it, but here's even PolitiFraud agreeing with me.
Do they name you by name?
No. But on the question of the emails. FBI findings tear holes in Hillary Clinton's email defense.
When was this published? Oh,
July 6, 2016. That's right after the Comey press conference.
Oh, Lordy.
Right?
Why aren't I 50 points ahead?
That's right.
That's what she's saying right
there. So, who actually authorized Team Clinton to keep information stored on secret servers? This is a link to a previous episode where we cover this in some depth on Her Majesty's secret servers.
That was a good one, Charles.
That was a good one.
I was just thinking of that this morning because I was thinking of the different movies that we've used, and I thought about James Bond, and I thought about this one. You've read my mind.
That's 20,275 views, to give you a sense.
Well, and you see, something's been happening to suppress the performance of the YouTube channel, because if anything, I'm getting more messages from people who watch Sunday with Charles, and we're getting more people signing up on patreon.com. So there's no other indicator that the popularity of Crowdsource the Truth and people's desire for the information that we're bringing forward has cut off by 50%. It's just the performance on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, again, as I've said in the past, I'm delighted that you all are watching this, but our target audience is the attorneys general in the 50 U.S. states, the head of the IRS, the head of the tax-exempt division of the IRS, people at Maine Justice, people in equivalent positions in countries around the world. I'd be delighted if 20 of those type of people were watching this. Here's this article in the Wall Street Journal by the person we met, Shelby Halliday and others, Holiday, whatever her name is. This may get blocked.
No, I subscribe to this for the phenomenally ridiculous price of...
You're styling. So, instead of Mueller probing the real interference in the 2015 to 16 election system that was, I would argue, involved the Democratic Party, it involved NeverTrumpers, it involved elements inside in our federal and state governments. Instead of probing that, What they're doing, apparently, is they're taking a look, and I think Peter Smith's strange death deserves more of a look, but they're looking at it for, I think, the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And they're looking at our friend Jerry Corsi and others. Again, instead of the Justice Department amping up the type of probe that should now have long ago borne fruit into the Clinton Foundation frauds, into the related donor frauds inside and outside this country, here we have an august team of people at the Wall Street Journal going down the Roger Stone, Peter Smith, Jerry Corsi rabbit hole.
Peter Smith never had contact with WikiLeaks. He had recommended that people send things to WikiLeaks, but that's just someone who has a general knowledge that WikiLeaks exists. You know, Charles, Mueller's probing all of these people, but tomorrow we're going to be doing a special episode with Michael Moore of True Pundit and Larry Klayman of FreedomWatchUSA.org. There's been another Mueller dump released on the FOIA lawsuit, because when Larry had this FOIA lawsuit against the special counsel's office, they've been delaying. They released obviously only partial emails, including communications between Shane Harris of the Wall Street Journal and Peter Carr, the press liaison in Robert Mueller's office. Emails that I believe reveal Shane Harris working hand in glove with the special counsel's office to craft a narrative that's driving the investigation towards Peter Smith, to link him to General Flynn, and to say this is where the Russia collusion came from, because Peter Smith is dead. And way back, we've been tracking this for over a year, Shane Harris planted seeds to create this false story that Peter Smith was working with Russian government hackers. He didn't realize that you had emails in your possession directly from the deceased that totally contradicted his stories. And when I called him to discuss it, he wasn't interested in finding out the facts of the information that we had. He just hung up on the phone on me.
That's because he'd already subscribed on Patreon?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Shane Harris
crowdsource the lie?
That's what Shane Harris is doing.
Yeah. Wow. So we might hit this link as well, but why did it take until the 10th of July 2015 to open up this investigation into Hillary Clinton for mishandling, which now, by the way, Jason's up to 27 dumps?
Huh. You know, instead of Miss America, she should be Mishandling. That's her new title. We can make a beauty pageant thing for her. 27 now. Oh, when did the 27th arrive?
I don't know, but there's lots there.
There's so much information for people to go through. It's almost overwhelming, Charles.
Which brings us to the next slide.
Of course.
Okay, we get, this is for the viewers, can hit this at another moment. You can hit, don't do it now. But this is a link. It's only 2 pages to something that came out on the 26th of October. And one of our accounting friends brought this to my attention. This is an internal letter to the file dated on the 3rd of October 2016 at 7 p.m. Now think about this, 3rd of October 2016. This is a full month before the general election. Right? Just putting this on the record because of the optics of this case. During the course of my review of a computer seized from Anthony Weiner, I encountered approximately at least 340,000 emails stored on the computer.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. That's, you know,
it's really more than one person would be emailing. That's an aggregation of a lot of people's emails.
Well, let's keep going. A significant number of these 340,000 emails appeared to be between Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton, the latter who appears to have used a number of different email addresses. Okay, that's October 3rd, 2016, they know this. Right after Comey has cleared Hillary the first time, and I think slightly before he reopens the matter. 340,000 emails. This is based simply on a review of header information. I did not review content of these emails, as the warrant only authorized me to view items that would give me probable cause to believe that child pornography evidence may reside therein. So in other words, this just a cursory look through this suggested that there were a large number between Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton. Why didn't immediately on October 3rd, or before that, I don't know when this review was completed, why didn't the FBI immediately analyze these 340,000 emails And if they did, was it the same team that had a conflict because they'd already cleared Hillary Clinton on July 5th, 2016?
Well, to be clear, Charles, this investigation was happening as a result of Anthony Weiner sexting the 15-year-old.
Right, but remember, Hillary signed and her team signed statements when they turned over the emails. These are all my work-related emails. And so you've got, remember, when you lie to the FBI, supposedly you get in trouble. So she did that, and now they get these other emails, and suddenly they seem to be emails between Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton, which were probably work-related, right? And because there were a lot of work relationships between Hillary.
There were like 4 companies that Humanity was working with.
Yeah, she was working for Teneo, she was working for the Clinton Foundation, she was working for the State Department, and she was working for the Clintons personally. So, but working for them and being paid. So she had a work-related, so where are all those emails, and how come, the people who are sandblasting Paul Manafort and George Papadopoulos and now Roger Stone, how come, these good people in the FBI are going back over the trail and say, now wait a minute, okay? This started July 10th, 2015, this investigation into mishandling. Okay, why did it take so long for it to start then? And how come by October 3rd, 2016, you hadn't reviewed these 340,000 emails that you have here? Obviously, she says, whoever's writing this, I will not review any emails to which Anthony Weiner is not a party, such as emails between Ms. Abedin and Mrs. Clinton. So this person is saying, I'm not going to go down before the election. I'm not going to go down and look at stuff that the voters might care a lot about. I just wanted to formally bring this to your attention due to the pending election, the ongoing congressional investigation of the FBI's own investigation into Mrs. Clinton's email activities, etc. So this person was aware there was an election.
This is an FBI or an
FBI.
NYPD?
I think FBI. I may have that wrong. But what the hell? I mean, if the current team, if Ray's team, has not already gone over chapter and verse into exactly the whole process of, how do those emails stay outside the custody and control of the U.S. government after Hillary left? What sort of interchange was there starting around February 1st, 2013, between Hillary Clinton and her people and the State Department saying, give us our damn property back?
Right.
Why was she allowed to have that property for a long period of time, defy subpoenas, bleach bit, restrict? Why did Comey and his team fall for all that, clear her, and then how come there wasn't a 7-alarm fire beginning by October 3rd, 2016? We had the senior State Department person walking in February saying, writing to Comey himself, saying, I can give you, let's go into a skiff, I can give you evidence that is incredibly incriminating of Hillary Clinton. We've seen that letter now, the communication. This person was a senior person, he knew what he was talking, he or she knew what they were talking about. And then this question of Bernie Sanders.
I'm glad you put that there.
Yeah, well, let's hit the Guardian story. That's the link there.
So he was dead wrong about the damn emails. Was he co-opted? I mean, this is basically the premise of what Jan has been talking about, that Bernie fooled us, that he was, part of the...
reality TV series.
Right, that he was playing a role, that he was part of, he's funded by the military-industrial complex. There was this whole thing with GE and...
And this is on Wednesday, October 14th, 2015.
And that is that the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Me too.
See, it looks almost scripted. It looks almost scripted when you see it now.
Especially the way she's laughing.
Right, and he's like, they're sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
You do that well.
It's the first time his hair is combed. I'm so disappointed in Bernie Sanders, because you know what, Charles? It's one thing when you're dealing with a scumbag and a liar.
And she's doing the hot sauce nod.
Right.
She's condescending.
It's another thing when you encounter a scumbag liar.
Yeah.
But it's even worse when it's somebody that you trusted turns out to be a scumbag liar. Right. Sorry, Bernie, you really
you're done.
Let us down.
You're done. So if we go back in, this is a thing to pull up. There's the story about how Senator Sanders' wife, Jane, was involved with a college that basically borrowed too much money to build out something and had to go and failed, went bankrupt. And so there was a federal investigation into this matter, and one wonders exactly what's going on with that.
Well, and also, how did she even get into this scenario? Was this perhaps somehow used to gain leverage over Bernie Sanders?
I don't know.
Because, the one thing is, maybe you cannot corrupt the man, but you start messing with his wife and his children and stuff, and even the most honest among us may have no choice.
Right. But this closed down in May of 2016.
Yeah.
Right? So just about the time that Hillary, pushed Bernie out.
Right.
So this is another area where I think, there needs to be some real, a serious investigation using the tough standards that have been applied to Manafort and others. We need to use, this, we need to, fair-minded people need to go over this record, and the public has a right to know, exactly what was going on during the 2015-16 election period. Were special pressures put on Bernie? Were special favors given to Bernie? If so, who was behind it? Who knew about it? How did they get negotiated? There's a whole series of questions that need to be asked of the Sanders people. Now, this is, to date, I've tried to, not be too into the detail. Sort of joking.
What are you talking about?
Exactly, I was waiting for that. In many states, and I pick on New York and California because those states are states that have high tax rates and therefore care about tax deductions for charities, should care about them because they're valuable. What we did here is we pulled up the tax filings for the main foundation only in California. Let's go into this link if we can, just for a second. And here you see in the FEIN numbers only, third box down. If we punch into there 31158, no dash, 1580204, and then hit at the bottom, search. Okay, what does it say under registration status?
Delinquent.
And that's the case also for another one, the Clinton Health Access Initiative. But if you hit now this thing, this link.
So what do they do if you're a delinquent?
In California, they let you, I don't know, move into Beverly Hills.
Run for Attorney General.
Run for Attorney, right? They embrace you with open arms in sanctuary city after sanctuary city. In theory, they should go after these people. And this gives you a sense, if we just stop here for a second, the first filing that they have on file in this site for the Clinton Foundation was accepted on September 10th, 2003. That was for the period 2002. But the Clinton Foundation registered in California in 1998. As far as I can tell, they may not have filed subsequent required filings, which would include audits in California, because they didn't do any audits. So they were registering, they were soliciting in 1998, 99, 2000, 2001, no reports. The first one we get is in 2002. People who want to go through this, it's a wrong address, that's not the legal address, the wrong name of the foundation, everything's wrong. But when we go back into the slide.
The wrong address. That reminds me of somebody else I know.
Yeah, exactly. So these are 5 questions that the Clinton Foundation has managed to get absolutely wrong for many, many years. So they add, these 4 questions apply to all years. The 5th question applies just, I think, to starting in 2004 forward. So were there any contracts, quote, were there other financial transactions between the organization, the Clinton Foundation, and any officer, director, or trustee thereof, either directly or with an entity in which any such officer, director, or trustee had any financial interest? So in other words, we say here, Bill Clinton and Ira Magaziner would have been, in my view, deemed officers, directors, and trustees of this notional chai that they claim they created in 2002. So the arrangements with Ranbaxy, with Mindspirit, with SJS, with the Clintons and Magaziner, all would have had to be reported. Of course, they were not. In addition, from 2010 to through 2015, payments to Bill Clinton from Laureate, which was a donor to the Clinton Foundation and a joint venture partner with, those would have to be disclosed. So those are not, none of that stuff's disclosed. This is a tough one. During this reporting period, was there any theft, embezzlement, diversion, or misuse of the organization's charitable property or funds? Every year from 2001, they didn't file in 2001, but every year from 2001 forward, they would have had to answer yes. Instead, they answered no. And when you answer yes, you can't say, move on, you don't talk about it. No, you're confessing to a crime, so they want information about that crime.
Did they say yes?
No, they said no, they lied.
Yeah.
So then, during this reporting period, were any organization funds used to pay any penalty, fine, or judgment? And of course, there were penalties, fines, or judgments paid in 2000, 2001, 2002, and I think 2003 in Mississippi. So they lie on that one. Did the organization receive any governmental funding? So they claim in the MOU, dated, I think, November, December 2008, that by that time they had gotten mammoth donations. There's a companion disclosure we've shown people before, but mammoth donations from all kinds of governments, Australia, Canada, Ireland, you name it. But for all of the filings through 2009, they say no to government donations. And the ones for 2010, they start to say yes, but they leave out the specifics of the foreign and they don't match. So they lie throughout. There's 4 questions, bold lies. The 5th one, I only noticed this over the weekend putting these slides together. In 2004, these idiots, this guy Rutherford, who's now the 2nd dean of the Clinton School of Public Service, is asked, did you prepare audited financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles? And he says, because he's a man of principle, he says, no.
Yeah.
Well, you have to. I mean, it's the law. You have, but he says, no, we didn't do that. Not in 2004.
Did he disclose that his prior role was dean of the Jeffrey Dahmler Culinary Institute?
I don't know. That's right. Or the Saudi Arabian Beauty School.
Right.
But so this is just one state. And so the way this works, again, you auditors out there or negotiating the representation letter from dopey Andrew Kessel, who really believes that I'm the one who doesn't understand consolidation and that he's the expert.
Well, Kevin says at least 18 million in U.S. government grants for all years combined.
Right. There you go. And so those would have all had to be, and then there's state grants and foreign grants, all would have to be disclosed. And they don't just say, tell us that you got grants. They say, if you got them, provide an attachment listing the name of the agency, the mailing address, the contact person, and the telephone number. That's to make sure, I think, that California wants to make sure that that's the real number, that you weren't scamming money from a government saying you put it in your charity when you put it in your personal pocket. Or your political campaign. Would there be no temptation for the Clintons to do that?
Nah.
So these deadlines, and some of these states say, you could extend your federal tax filing to November 15th, 2018, but not in Florida. If you can't go past this. So the deadline of November 15th may not be the real deadline. And the accounting firm...
What do you mean? What would be the real?
Individual states, like Florida says, you've got to get your filing in sooner.
Oh.
The Department of Treasury says, if you've got foreign bank accounts, you got to disclose them all, and the balances, everything, high, low, average, starting, who has authority over, account by account, detail by detail. That's got to be disclosed June 30th. So this is just a microcosm of how much trouble they could be in one state.
Well, the other thing I find very interesting, Charles, is that if anybody operating in any charity did one of these things, received that huge payment from Laureate while Laureate was giving money to the charity, they'd go to jail for a long, long time. CMC on Periscope is comparing Laureate to What's the Matter You. Bullwinkle fan, Charles?
Yeah, I love Bullwinkle. I went there. Anyway, so if we go to the next page, I reviewed the filings, and you can go back into the link to look at it yourself. For 2002 to 2016, these are the dates that they were filed. Now, when it's late, past the final filing deadline, it's in red. A lot of red. So not only did they, every filing from 2005 forward has been late, but interestingly, around February 4th, 2016, somehow Andy Kessel decided that he better resubmit filings for 2010, 11, 12, and 13 to disclose some of the government grants. Now that's right around the time, remember, the senior State Department person walks in and says, I know about all kinds of problems involving Hillary Clinton. Let's go into a skiff. What would those problems likely be? A foreign government sending money to the Clinton Foundation that is then perhaps used to fund the Clinton campaign or used to bribe a foreign official, or used to repay a donor one way or another.
In exchange for classified info.
In exchange for classified info. And here you see this refiling February 4th, 2016. That didn't happen because Kessel woke up on that day and said, you know what, I better fix this. I mean, there's probably back and forth emails from Kessel.
Typos in there.
Yeah, somebody told him to do this, and initially said, I can't do that. Well, let's do that. What are the issues? Where are all those emails? So this is just problems in California. And mind you, California and Massachusetts and New York and many other states have laws that say if you have a material adverse change in the condition of your charity, like you got these maniacs that crowdsource the truth, and Sunday with Charles doing show after show after show talking about fraud. You've got an accounting letter that you got to be signed by November 15th that you probably can't sign. You get pressure to refile. Your accounting firm should really yank their previous audits because they're all fraudulent, based on false and materially misleading information with material omissions not disclosed. You got problems in the same way that GE has problems now with Her Majesty's government in England. This charity is better have problems around the United States and around the world as we vector in on this November 15, 2016 day. Are they going to get an audit or not? And if they don't get an audit, what are the governments going to do? One of the people who've been trying to pressure, like me and others, who've been trying to pressure the IRS, pressure the Department of Justice, pressure foreign governments to act, when are these governments going to protect the interests of the common person who gives, in this donating season, we're going around to peak donating season, people will give the bulk of their money away now through the end of the year. We're going to let the Clinton Foundation and its associated network of false flag rogue charities fundraise in 2018 under the Trump administration?
I hope not.
Yeah. So if we go to the next page, this is interesting. We've been sold this whole blue wave or red storm rising thing. If we hit this AP News link, yeah, somehow it'll come up. So in state after state, it seems that there is amazing turnout. Now we don't yet know. On the one hand, you'll hear on some channels, the left-leaning channels, you'll hear that what's going on is the millennials are out in force. They're out, some states 5 times what it was in 2016, or maybe 2014. I'm not sure they're comparable. But there is significant interest in this midterm election. Generally speaking, in midterm elections, the interest is lower than in the general election. This could be different.
Yeah.
And the big speculation at this point is it the people who were so upset when because the fireworks were canceled and the Grucci family only got 75% or whatever, they probably got 100% of what they would have billed. Is it those people who've been gnashing their teeth and throwing lattes at each other or whatever? Is it those people who are going to come out and vote, or is it people who are so horrified by the mobs and the spectacles that we saw in the Kavanaugh hearing? Just, we don't know yet, but we will know by the time we have our closing intro on Wednesday.
Of course.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
As it were.
It's, people definitely do seem a lot more engaged in politics overall, because I think people are waking up to the fact that something's wrong.
And then the second link, this is funny, especially given, what you were saying about Laura Loomer and Keith Ellison. This is the chairman of the Democratic Party actually said this. Democrats never hesitated to take action on sexual misconduct allegations, says Chairman Tom Perez. Hello, Bill Clinton. Hello, Keith Ellison. Give me a break. And who's he saying it to? The redoubtable
fake yapper.
Fake yapper. I mean, somebody who says something that's stupid should not. You let him talk. Well, no, you should be allowed to talk, but you got the role of the moderator is to say, Chairman Perez, with all due respect, I mean, how can you, with a straight face, make that comment when the Democrats protected Bill Clinton's deviant behavior for what is it?
Still do.
Yeah, for 18 years, minimum, since he left the White House.
That's ridiculous.
And then we have this guy, Nate Silver, who on television he comes across as a very smart guy. We don't yet know, obviously, what's going to happen, but he's basically in Drudge saying it's an 85% chance that the Democrats take the House.
I remember hearing it was like a 98% chance
Right.
that Hillary was going to win, so I'm feeling like it's a landslide for
This is what,
Republicans.
you're not buying silver, right? Despite
Right.
all the ads for silver coins, Nate Silver, et cetera, you're not buying
No,
any silver.
not buying silver.
Yeah. So if we jump back in,
Little finance joke there, Charles.
that's right. Florida is really interesting. If we hit this one. Now, the Florida case, this Tallahassee mayor who's running, Tallahassee is out of control. Of course, we had the recent shooting there, and to be fair to the candidate, at least he suspended his campaign temporarily. But I wonder it'll be very interesting to see the margin one way or the other in this race. I would say that Ron DeSantis has not run a great campaign. It's not, for somebody with his amazing qualifications, he went,
Experience.
I think he went to, I'm pretty sure he went to Yale, and then but he went from Yale into the military, serving active duty. I mean, that's a little bit unusual. It's a wonderful thing that he did that. And then Harvard Law School, and then from that to Congress, and he's done a lot of good things in his life. He's relatively young, in his 40s. He at times, at least when he's in Congress giving speeches, he seems to be able to give speeches, but on the campaign trail, he hasn't really been electrifying.
He's able to speak, but just not that well.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but if he ends up winning, it'll be interesting to see his margin of victory. If, on the other hand, if Gillum wins by a wide margin of victory, then we are in for big trouble, I think. Big trouble. Because he's gone down to Florida saying, this is what I'm going to do. All you people who have left the Northeast and the Midwest and California where there are high taxes, come to Florida where I have low taxes. I'm going to raise your taxes now that you're here. I'm going to increase your corporate income taxes. I'm going to have Medicare for all or an equivalent of that.
Bait and switch.
We're going to be Venezuela. You shouldn't have come to Florida. You should have gone direct to Venezuela. If he nevertheless manages to win, then that will be quite bad. My money is actually on, I'm not betting, but my emotional money would be on DeSantis. So that we don't have to hit this link because I'm mindful of the time.
We don't condone wagering, Charles.
That's true, we don't. But the weather, and we don't necessarily believe weather forecasters, but they're saying Tuesday is going to be in the Northeast and in the center portion of the states. There's going to be a lot of rain.
Oh,
so
that hurts the turnout.
It hurts. Well, it depends. It will probably, people are sort of not fired up to vote, won't come out.
Right.
There's a suspicion that Republicans will swarm out nonetheless, and that millennials may say, I'm sleeping in, where's the bong?
I thought you were going to say there was a suspicion that they were using the harp to create rain and slow down the...
But on the Senate, I want to spend a few seconds on that. We can hit that link, the Federalist. Like on the Senate, when we start thinking, there's an ad I saw this morning, it was around noon actually, against Menendez that is just brutal. And it's an ad where it's a mother reading to her little baby who's in a crib, a girl baby in a crib, excerpts of the testimony under oath from, I think, Menendez, where he's admitting that he went and traveled abroad to have fun with underage prostitutes. So it's really a brutal ad.
That in testimony?
It's something like this. It's reading from some legal document saying, I'll never be able to explain this vote to you when you grow up. I mean, the ad is brutal. And New Jersey is a place, and the Republican candidate, is a successful business person who is an outsider, but he certainly, to me, it looks like that could be a pickup in New Jersey. We should go down here. We stick on this just for a second. In Texas, the people I'm talking to, and I don't talk to many left-wing Texans, but There may not be that many
It's
left.
like hen's teeth.
But they're, exactly. But they're telling me in Texas that Beto is exactly that, Beto. That's not happening.
Well, but then it's Ted Cruz, who, I mean...
I think the next step on Cruz, if things go according to plan, well, he gets a phone call after one of them disappears on the Supreme Court. Supreme Court.
Oh, no. Ted Cruz, I don't...
He's a top lawyer.
I do not like Ted Cruz, and I want to know what his father was doing hanging out at the...
All right, we'll leave that. We'll agree to disagree on that one. In Florida, if Gillum wins, we'll stay on that chart though. If you don't mind,
Sure.
sorry. If Gillum wins, then Nelson will win. But if DeSantis wins, then I think Rick Scott will win. So that would be another pickup. I don't know anything about Georgia. It'd be interesting to see whether the Oprah effect causes the Stacey Abrams to beat this Secretary of State Kemp.
I believe Stacey Abrams was the person that David Hogg was campaigning for in Laura's video.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
And then Michigan, there's an attractive candidate, African-American Senate candidate, Republican, who is behind the existing Democratic senator, but really interesting to see how that race plays out. Montana, Donald Trump must love it out there in Montana.
It's
I think
beautiful.
He's been there 5 times, I think, campaigning.
Get a log cabin there, Charles.
You have one?
No, I don't have one. I've seen them. You should get one.
Yeah, and there's a good shot, I think, that Tester will be defeated there. In North Dakota, I think Heitkamp will be defeated. We don't have Missouri up on the list here. I think McCaskill could be defeated. So when you start thinking about every time a existing Democrat is defeated by a Republican, that's a switch of 2, right? And so we can have a scenario here where there's quite a movement in the Senate. I don't want to be so bold as to say up into the 60s, but it could be, 55, 56, 57. And so Tuesday night is definitely going to be a night that I will be watching television.
Absolutely. I mean, people got to be careful because there have been so many overt calls for resistance that is not necessarily civil. Could be dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
People burn down the city after a football game.
And then on Mueller, we have this story here in The Hill that people are expecting Mueller to pounce immediately after the election. There's a lot of focus on Roger Stone. Roger Stone often likes to have the focus be on him.
Probably not right now.
No.
This is a little bit of unwanted attention.
But so we're certainly expecting Mueller to do something.
I discussed that with Larry Klayman as well. He seems to feel that even if Mueller has nothing, he'll make it into something.
He's got to try something, I would guess. Then Ken Starr has a piece where he's saying Trump has done nothing approaching an impeachable offense.
Kenneth Starr?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting.
So that's interesting from just this morning. You can watch the video and read it yourself.
And of course, for people who maybe don't recall, Kenneth Starr investigated Whitewater, tons of stuff with the Clintons. So
Right. He does know what an impeachable offense is.
he doesn't know what a suicide is, though. So I'm not so sure how I feel about Kenneth Starr, but that's interesting nonetheless, Charles.
All right. So if we go back in, this is a story that's a bit frightening. That apparently they went in the embassy in London. They apparently attempted a break-in late in October 29th, into Assange's residence. I don't like that at all.
No, they're trying to kill him. They can't leave this guy alone. He's been locked inside that embassy for, 8 years, something like that?
In a long time.
It's really unprecedented. It's terrible.
Then now we're sort of we have one semi-humorous one. If we hit this Business Insider, a UN report has been issued now saying that San Francisco is treating its homeless people, they're cruel and inhuman treatment in San Francisco, which is a very rich city. But here's the UN calling San Francisco's treatment of homeless people out. I mean, it's like, do you have
What
something
exactly are they
better
doing?
to do? I mean, at the UN, I mean, really.
What is cruelly human homeless crisis is human rights violation? I mean, honestly, I was thinking similar things about
Los Angeles?
Los Angeles. Like, I mean, just even for selfish reasons, you don't want this many desperate people around because they're going to do crime. Like, what can they do? I don't really know. I mean, how can they help them?
Well, the problem is in cities like, the word goes out into, to people. If you find yourself homeless and you gotta go someplace, you don't want to go to, rural Mississippi, right? You're going to want to go to a place where there is a safety net. And so you can be exacerbating the problem. Now, somebody was explaining, the guy who set up Salesforce.com,
Oh, yeah.
he was explaining that unlike New York, which does have homeless shelters already built, so a lot of the people you see during the day, they can go to a place and sleep overnight in safety, actually. San Francisco has not done that.
Wow.
So
Has
yet,
LA?
I don't know if LA's done it either. So now maybe real estate was more expensive there or whatever, and I joke here that for San Francisco, they're gonna have to change the name of that song to "I Left My Unmentionable in San Francisco." But
Oops.
yeah, so if we go,
That's the same one.
yeah, we just go back into the slides. We have not dwelt today too much on the Clinton Foundation frauds, just because there's such, in the previous 116 videos, there's just a hell of a lot of information on it, and I felt we should give more emphasis to the election and what's going to happen in the coming week. But I would like to put people on notice that once we get the Clinton Foundation frauds and the donors to those foundations, once we get them prosecuted, the next challenge that I've already begun is to go after intolerant, tax-subsidized and taxpayer-supported, in quotes, universities. I think we've reached a place. You go back. I was at this event for Harvard Business School, and you might ask yourself, why does a business school like Harvard, which is arguably in the top 5, let's say, why does it need financial support? I mean, isn't the whole idea of business that your revenue should be bigger than your expenses? And if the school is teaching you about business can't make a profit,
It's not good.
yeah, isn't there a basic problem with that?
Get in the Uber and the guy's blind.
Right.
Exactly. Get another one.
Yeah. So the issue with our business school, 4 years ago, I went to a kickoff event where they decided they wanted another $1 billion in their endowment, and I thought to myself, geez, that's a lot for a business school to ask for. At the event, which was held at a very nice setting up in Lincoln Center, they announced at the opening of the capital campaign drive that they had raised $750 million.
Wow.
That's a strong move, Before we get started, we raised $750 million. Well, I thought the thing would be finished quickly, but it was only finished recently. The dean heard that you could get $750 that quickly, so he said, well, why don't we ask for 1.3 instead of, 1. So they asked for 1.3 and they got 1.4.
Wow.
And that's a lot of money. When you think about professional schools like the business school, the law school, the medical school, maybe the nursing school, these are schools that, they all should be making money, and one wonders why they should have a tax exemption. I could see the architecture, not the architecture, I could see the history, the pure science, I could see all that, medieval studies, I could see why, for that you might need a tax exemption. But when you've got this collection of schools that is coining money, and when you also have a federal government and state governments that are giving out grants, big grants to these, and when these big universities are running hospitals and making money off that,
right.
You got to ask yourself, all right, well, if they're going to keep the tax exemption, which is debatable in my mind, shouldn't it be the case, just as when they forced coeducational sports on universities, they literally forced these athletic departments to have the same number of equal weight. Shouldn't a university that's getting grants and tax exemption, shouldn't it be forced to have a rigorous debate of competing viewpoints, as opposed to foisting propaganda at this point from the left primarily, throwing it down, forcing the students, the gullible students, to agree with what the professor has and not challenge the professor. That's a very dangerous approach, and it has set certain countries back. You know, Germany, as an example, in the 1800s, I'm told, Germany's universities were the envy of the world. You know, now they're not. I mean, can you think of any? I can't think of a single person I know of who went to a German university who's even German. So you can see what can happen. I'm not suggesting that what's going on there is akin to Nazism for World War I. I'm just saying when you start having intolerance in an educational institution, that's really bad.
Right. Well, the only competing ideas, it seems, these days, Charles, are should you hit someone on the head with a bike lock or a beer bottle while you're in your Antifa costume?
Exactly.
It's pretty bad.
Exactly.
Well, Charles, it was another powerhouse presentation. The evidence mounts, the questions loom. Will these big dorks see any jail time?
I'm hopeful. I
I
think
think the two guys in the middle are more likely than the two on the outside.
I'd say Comey's in serious trouble already. Mueller, it's going to take some, we'll have to wait and see how the balls bounce in the next several days, weeks, and months. Hillary, I think the answer to your question is we're either going to get all of these people prosecuted or none of them.
Really?
As a guess. Yeah, because once you go down into the Clinton Foundation and really, you know, hold the Clinton Foundation and those perpetrators of the frauds at the Clinton Foundation responsible and accountable. Once you do that, you implicate the Obamas.
I thought you were going to say you don't come back.
No,
You do implicate the Obamas. It would be so unprecedented to see a headline that a former U.S. president was indicted, or, I mean, I would love to see it happen, and it certainly is deserved, but we shall see. Tuesday's going to be a big day, Charles. Anything else we want to discuss before we wrap it up?
No, welcome back.
Yeah, now we've got daylight savings time. It feels like nighttime.
Because it is.
Well, I definitely want to thank all of our viewers, and I want to remind everyone that everything on Crowdsource the Truth is viewer-sponsored, so it's really important that people go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, become a sponsor. I've had a lot of conversations with people at Patreon. There are going to be some exciting new features coming to the platform, new ways we're going to be able to offer people choices for how they can sponsor, discounts for, sponsorships over long periods of months, and free gifts for sponsoring, and all that stuff's going to be coming soon. So get on board now, and you'll be the first to be able to take advantage of some of those things. And it also just helps keep the show going and all that kind of stuff. So thank you, Charles, for another wonderful show, and thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you tomorrow with Light on Conspiracies with Ole Damagard, only on Patreon. So go over to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/lightonconspiracies. Ole has come under attack from a variety of angles. He needs your sponsorship as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Sunday night.